Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely. I am a little bit haggard this week, I'm a little bit ill and I have been travelling a lot more than I want to in the last few days, but that is not going to stop me. We have a fantastic mixed show today of projects and things on funding websites and news, so without any further ado, let's get on with the show. We're going to start the show with a quick whip through a few interesting projects, beginning with emulating the old IBM PC on a piece of newer microcontroller hardware. And that hardware is the ESP32. It seems like there's almost nothing that this little system on chip can't do. But the reason that this works so well is entirely down to the person that did it. And that is Fabrizio Di Vittorio, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, who has not just created a couple of videos in it, there is a full playlist showing everything that the old IBM PCs could do, and it seems to be all running perfectly. In fact, it even says here in the Hackaday article, it even runs Flight Simulator, which was somewhat of a de facto standard for PC compatibility in the 1980s. There are a couple of great embeds in here. One of the things I just in the first few seconds of seeing this video, you see something quite interesting, which is it has its own Wi-Fi configurator, and then once you have once you've configured your Wi-Fi, you have the option of downloading different operating systems. And if you skip on a little bit, you will see a very familiar MS-DOS run screen. Yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia in this for me. As I mentioned many times before, I grew up in a house with a hobby computer person, and while these versions of MS-DOS and I believe Windows 3 were before my time, there was always several computers of different ages sitting up in my dad's study, and this particular screen especially is something that I find very nostalgic and is a very early memory of mine. I will link the Hackaday article in the description of this video because there are links to Fabrizio's YouTube playlist from it here, and there's several things in this playlist that you will find interesting if you're interested in this, along with the Grease soundtrack, interestingly enough. Yes, there's also a couple of videos here. But if you are a fan of retro computing, as I'm sure many of you on the show are, you'll be very happy to hear that the ESP32 makes a pretty good IBM PC of the modern age. Moving on to a wonderful retro camera retrofit using the Raspberry Pi Zero. As you can see, this is taken from the Raspberry Pi blog, and there isn't all that much to say about this one other than it's a beautifully simple but wonderful idea. This takes the old school cartridges that fit into some older film cameras and fits it with a Raspberry Pi Zero and a Raspberry Pi camera. Just the standard definition camera, because the high definition ones are very bulky. But the real key to this is that the lens from the Raspberry Pi camera has been removed so that you can use the actual lens from the older camera itself. Now, I will link the blog post because that gives a great rundown of it all. But what I would like to show you just now is a brief clip from the video that the maker made. So the creator of this project is Benefitive on YouTube, and this is a channel that you may have come across before. Something that I hoped to feature on the show at the time, but unfortunately I think I had to cut it out for time reasons, was this project, which was taking a flip phone from the year 2000 and putting Android 9 on it. In fact, if I remember correctly, the only reason we couldn't put it on that week's show is because there was another retro phone project from that week which did something similar, and I had to choose one. So I'm very glad that we're featuring Benefitive on the show, and this is the video that is linked, by the way, in the very top of the blog article, so if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can do that here. But what I want to show you just quickly is this little clip of the video. Do watch the whole thing, it is very interesting and explained well, but this bit just for some reason hit me hard. That retro case for a camera giving a live feed to a laptop is such a wonderful idea to me. It really tickles me for some reason, can't say why, but yes, this is a wonderful project. Such a stuck record. I know I say this almost every week, but take old things, put new things in it, give them a new lease of life. Oh, I love it. Up next, we're returning to the ESP32 with a project on the Electromaker website. This takes the TTGO, which is an ESP32 board with a screen built into it, which has a lot of nice 2D libraries, and writes an entirely new 3D library for importing object files and being able to actually view 3D models on an ESP32. A very cool idea indeed. So this is a project from Ressorization, and this is the board I was referring to, the TTGO, which is essentially just a regular ESP32 evaluation board with a screen on it. You could use any ESP32 board for this, I would imagine, although I think it might have to have the same amount of cores, so maybe not an ESP32S2, but either way, any ESP32 board with an attached screen, be that SPI or I2C. And as the creator says, why? Because I can, also procrastination. Can it be useful? Probably not. It's cool though, I know, and I agree, it is. It's a very cool idea, and it's a lovely idea just to do something, just to see if you can, just out of interest. There are definite limitations to this. It only displays wireframes, but that's perfectly fine by me. As you can see here in the code, there are a couple of things you can change in order to change things like rotation speed, and you can turn it manually, I believe, by using the two buttons on here. Of course, you can add your own buttons for that. And so if you are interested in trying this from the ESP32 of your own, if you have this TTGO board, and they are very wonderful things, I would highly recommend playing with one if you haven't. You can use that, or you can get yourself a standard ESP32 board with a screen and various peripherals. But yes, just a fantastic little project. I love things like this. Doing things just for the hell of it because you want to see if you can is the best way to learn how to do absolutely anything, in my opinion. Fantastic project. Staying on the Electromaker website with a project from Greenie PM. This is Trashbot, the trash can's answer to the Roomba. And as you can see, this is a trash can on a cardboard chassis that is remote controllable via Bluetooth. It has an ultrasonic sensor in it, so it will speak to you when it gets near to you because it has some scavenged speakers from a hi-fi system in there, and it runs using two different Arduinos. Now, not only is this a fantastically detailed write-up of everything, including some hand-drawn diagrams of the circuitry, the explanation really is down to a level that if you have no previous experience in doing this kind of stuff, I honestly think you could follow this tutorial and get this thing working. Not only has it got all of the code and everything you need, Greenie has also created a frankly hilarious and still very educational video for this. His channel is here at Greenie PM. You can get to it from here. He definitely deserves more subscribers than the 40 he has. He has a great sense of humor, and yes, pretty much everything in this is something that pretty much every moment in this is not boring. It is all well thought out, and here you can see the thing in and of itself working, or as it seems in this particular moment, not working all that well. But it works amazingly considering, as I mentioned before, the chassis of this robot is made out of a cardboard box and the components are held in with tape. I love that. That's my kind of build. This is fantastic. Congratulations. Moving over to Great Scott. Now, Great Scott is a well-known YouTuber and a firm favourite of the show, who recently got his hands on a bit of Ferrofluid and decided to make an Arduino-based music visualizer using Ferrofluid, which is something unique. I've never heard of anyone doing this before. This immediately caught my eye, and what actually happened with it, the way this project turned out, was stunning. So while I highly recommend you watch the whole video, as Great Scott has a real talent for explaining things in great detail, and of course is well known for his absolutely beautiful, again, hand-drawn diagrams in his videos, the idea behind it is rather than using LED visualizers to light up a certain amount of LEDs for different parts of the frequency spectrum and different amplitudes, this uses just an array of 6 magnets for low, medium, and high frequencies, and so you can see what is happening in the music by which way the ferrofluid moves towards these magnets. That is an incredibly simplified way of explaining it. I would suggest watching the video. But as you can see from this bit at the end, it is actually quite a beautiful thing that he comes up with. I will leave it at that. Great Scott, as I've mentioned, I will put a link to it in the description. This is, just a unique project and a really well realized one. Just before we move on, a very quick bit of housekeeping. If you are enjoying the show, there are a number of things you can do on YouTube to support the show completely for free. Underneath each video, you will see this big red subscribe button. Clicking that won't actually change your usage of YouTube all that much. It will make it far more likely that we'll show up on the first page of YouTube when you go to it. You'll be recommended to us. And also, if you look under the subscriptions tab, our videos will now show up there whenever we release them. Another thing that you can do which really would help is click this little bell here. Now this is a little bit more optional because this will give you notifications in the browser only when you're on YouTube when we put a show live. These aren't desktop notifications unless you set them up that way, but I wouldn't recommend it. However, if you click all, it will mean that whenever we do release a show, you will get notifications. And if I now click up here, you will see, I have this because I have already had notifications on this channel and turned it off so I can show you me turning them on. And you'll get a little notification bell here, a little notification here that you can just click and go straight to the video. And finally, it may sound somewhat obvious, but if you are enjoying the video, please do click like if you like it. It lets YouTube know that you like it, and it lets us know that you like it as well, and liking things is nice. Electromaker also has a shop, which you can find at electromaker.io, which stocks things for pretty much any maker project that you would need. If you really do want to support the show, the shop is the best way you can possibly do it. That is directly financially supporting the future of the Electromaker Show, although, as always, when it comes to financial things, there is no obligation whatsoever. It's just worth considering. At the other end of the spectrum, if you just want to hang out in a very free environment, we have a Discord server, which is linked in the description of every video, and that is a place just for hanging out, showing off your projects, and just generally chatting about the show and anything else you would like to. Any one of these things is completely optional, but it does help the show a lot, and thank you for putting up with our little call to action adverty thing, whatever this is. But yes, let's get on with the rest of the show. It is time for funding website things, and this week we have two pre-launch products, both aimed at a privacy and kind of security angle, both unique in their own ways. And we're beginning with Buskill, which is a USB kill code for your laptop, and it sort of does exactly what it says on the tin. The idea of having a laptop stolen is something that I think is quite a fearful thing for a lot of us, not necessarily because of the financial outlay, but because we use the internet for so many things. And while my laptop is password protected, if someone was to grab it while it was unlocked, and I have been stupid enough to say stand up and go to the toilet in a public space without locking it before, I've been guilty of that, and many people have. It's all they have to do is keep it on and stop it from locking up, and they have access to anything that you just take for granted, like passwords in your browser. I know I could be a lot more security conscious, but I'm simply not. And this is exactly what this is in place of. This is exactly what it's designed to stop. This very short video shows what it does. Essentially, if someone grabs a laptop, when this cable goes, it will do one of various predefined things. So as it mentions here, it can be used to trigger a few different things. The GUI app currently supports the ability to trigger a lock screen on all three platforms, but they'll soon be releasing built-in triggers to shut down the computer when the cable disconnects. And it works across all platforms, whether we're Windows, Mac, and Linux. And as it says here, advanced Linux users can manually add auxiliary triggers, such as a self-destruct trigger that wipes the LUKS header, making the entire disk permanently inaccessible. Which is, if you are someone who is in a position where you really can't let a laptop fall into the wrong hands, that would be a very useful thing. So this is pre-launch, as it says, but the idea behind it, I think, is great. That you can either attach this to yourself, and if you walk away from your computer, it will kill the computer. You probably don't want to set it up to completely nuke your computer just in case you accidentally get up and walk away in a coffee shop. But who knows? Maybe that's something that you need. Anyway, as mentioned, this is pre-launch. We will come back to it when it goes live. I just thought it was a very unique project. You don't see things all that often like this on Crowd Supply, and a very nice idea. And as always with this, if you want to get more information, you can subscribe in the box here. If you want to see what they're up to in terms of the project, all of the designs and documentation is open source, and they also have a hardware developer guide documentation just here that I did have a little look through, and it does look like it's something that might be quite interestingly hackable. I do wonder whether the one thing that could be done with it is, like, say I was playing a little bit of cheeky Trackmania on my laptop when I should be working in a public place, and just being able to yank that and have it shut the game for me would be quite a fun little thing. But yes, we'll come back to this one another time. Moving on to Unsurv Offline. Now, this is a very interesting idea for a board. This essentially, as it says, it's a GNNS receiver with ESP32 and NFC. It also has a little one-cell Li-ion battery on it, and an accelerometer, and it is a GPS device that is designed to protect your privacy. The general conceit of this is that it's an alternative to using your mobile phone as a GPS tracking device, because you're sharing that information with, say, Google or Apple, depending on what phone you have. This is designed to be a GPS tracker that is completely private to you, and then you can access that data either via the SD card later after the fact, or via NFC on your phone, and using OpenStreetMap data. It's a really fascinating idea, and I really love the idea of having a completely open-sourced and completely private to yourself GPS thing. For me, I find it fascinating, not just from a privacy point of view, but as someone who is getting increasingly more obsessed with running, I do like the idea of having my own GPS tracker that I control how often it polls, I control what happens with the information, As mentioned in the Stanford article last week, there are now Raspberry Pi ways of working out your own calories burnt and things like that. And all of these things together are starting to add up to me thinking I'd love to try and make some roll your own fitness computer. But I don't think that's what these people are going for at all. It's just what I thought with it. This is much more a privacy-focused project. And yes, as it says here, privacy-friendly, small, lightweight PCB loaded with an ESP32 GNSS GPS receiver and NFC capabilities. Using a combination of OSM data on the SD card and a custom Android app, Unsurv Offline allows you to gather the data through the day and easily analyze it and use it later on. Our goal is to enable a broad discussion about invasive technologies that follow us increasingly closer in our daily lives and help disrupt familiarization to offline surveillance. Unsurf is also perfect for a variety of other location tracking uses, which is what I was just going into. I like the fact that it has a accelerometer on it as well, because presumably that means you could just have it set that it would only start tracking GPS when you were moving, for example. As it says, you can set it up to actually use it as a tap or double tap system for activating it, which again presumably uses the accelerometer for that. Yeah, here's another thing that I find kind of interesting. How many surveillance cameras have you potentially been seen by during the day? And so, yeah, it's hard to tell, isn't it? Unsurv can really help you with that. It'll also do simple location logging and automated tracking with Wi-Fi map signal strength. I'm really interested with that part of it where it says how many surveillance cameras have you potentially seen. I always wonder whether this means it's just logging the Wi-Fi signal that cameras have, or if I'm missing something here. If I've missed something here, feel free to tell me I'm being silly in the comments. But this is a very interesting project. There's a little bit more information down here, and this is the ESP32 chip and the single cell Li-ion battery I mentioned on the back. Again, it's pre-launch. We'll come back to it when it goes live, because I have definite ideas for this, even if they aren't the intended ones. And if you are someone who's interested in the privacy side and opening the conversation up about the amount of GPS tracking we do face, this is these people, I think, are after your own heart. Just before moving on, I'd like to reiterate that I am a little bit haggard and feeling slightly ill, so apologies if there's been a lot more mumbling and ers and ums and ahs in this show. I am soldiering on and feeling fine, but my brain is a little cloudier than usual. Yep, it is that time again for the mystery box competition, and as you can see, this is a mystery box. It says it on the box, and it is from the wonderful people at Mauser Electronics. It also says that on the box. And the way it generally works is I reach my hand in and I find a box, and that's a big box, and it is a box from Microchip. Ooh, cool. So, a box from Microchip, although a box without anything written on it. PIC24, it's a PIC24 development board. Okay, I've heard of these. The Curiosity development board is an evaluation board for the PIC24. It is open, so I will very gingerly take this out of the packet, although I see a static bag, so maybe that's as far as I go. If it has not been opened. So you probably will not be able to see all that well because of the studio lights and because of the dark packaging. However, I will dig up a little bit of documentation. I have heard of these boards. These are the Arduinos of PIC boards, if you could put it that way, I guess. It's a very nice way of getting started with 16-bit or 8-bit or 32-bit PIC controllers, although I believe this is a 16-bit controller on the board. Anyway, I will dig up some documentation. And here is a much clearer, i.e. not in a static bag, image of said board, and this is the PIC24F Curiosity Development Board, and here is the aforementioned chip. It is a 16-bit microcontroller from Microchip, and you will be using the same software from that you'd use with AVR controllers. I don't know if there's Arduino IDE support for this, but this is very much the beginner board for getting into PIC microcontrollers. There's a couple of other nice things on this as well, you may notice as well. This is a user potentiometer. There are several user buttons. There's an RGB LED here. These are breakouts for all of the different pins, and this is also a microbus add-on area. And if you're not familiar with microbus, that is the shields to AVR boards, or the shields to microchip boards that Arduino shields are to Arduino boards. I feel like I could have said that with many fewer words. Oh, and this little top corner up here, this is a USB debugger. So you will be able to program this over USB. You do not need any kind of programmer for it. And you can debug through the MTLab software. MTLab, am I calling it the right name? It's been a while since I've actually used it. But yes, there is a separate page for the Curiosity boards, because there are several boards in the Curiosity line. And it is MPLab. Yes, that's what I was. MTLab, MPLab. Yeah, I was close enough. These are all the tools that you will use to program the board. Anyway, I could spend a long time waxing lyrical about how cool I think this little board will be to use, but the reality of the situation is it is not for me to play with, it is for one of you to play with, so let's find a prize winner for this board. And the winner of this week's Mystery Box competition is N9XYP, whose name is very difficult to say. Congratulations, we'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this board out to you, and you're absolutely correct, that Stanford project is really interesting. And in the time since I reported on it on last week's show, just so you, as a quick reminder, that is the Stanford project where they were using IMUs on 2 points of people's legs in a Raspberry Pi to give a more accurate calorie burning idea than these kind of fitness watches will generally give you. My brain has been awash with, if I'm going to be running with a Raspberry Pi anyway, all the different things that it could maybe do. That's a project for another day. Anyway, this is Waffle. Congratulations, N9XYP. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this wonderful little pick board out to you. And I think it's high time we get on with the rest of the show. And to round out the show, 3 short news pieces that I found interesting over the last week, beginning with Adafruit talking about the silicon shortage. So the global semiconductor shortage is something that I think everybody knows about, not just people who are into hobby or microcontrollers or industry side of it. People who want to get consumer devices haven't been able to. Everything from games consoles to smart fridges just haven't been being made because they haven't been able to get the chips involved for building them. It's so ubiquitous that it's kind of amazing. It shows how much semiconductors have taken over the modern age. Something we already knew, but yeah, it's kind of sobering to see it in action. This is something a little bit new, and it makes for grim reading, unfortunately. Now, it's a very short article, but I still won't read it in full. I'd go and read it in their own words. But in short, as you may expect, when you can't get semiconductors from the manufacturers, people who have stocks of them will start selling them at second hand, and they will bump the price up to make a little profit on them. It's not the nicest behavior, but it's somewhat understandable. But this is kind of insane. An existing purchase order from ST for these LSM 9DS1s, the price had gone up from around $4 per chip to over $15 per chip, but this was an existing purchase order. So that seems like scumbaggery of the highest order to me. If you make a purchase order at a price, you shouldn't hike that price up in between. Maybe you think I'm overreacting again. Let me know in the comments if you have something to say about that. But yeah, it seemed a little bit odd and not particularly nice, and something I thought, while it isn't fun and great and all happy Electromaker Show usualness, it's something we should probably all know about. Staying with the Adafruit website, in fact, all 3 of our stories are on the Adafruit website to end the show. I didn't really mean that to happen, but it just so happened Adafruit covered all 3. This is 3DAT or 3DAT, which is the way that they've started capturing athletic performances. These are football players you see in the video, but the article is also talking about Olympic athletes, because there was a link to an article on the Scientific American about it as well. But 3DAT is kind of a weirdly revolutionary thing, because whereas historically you've attached all kinds of sensors and things to athletes to try and get data that you can use to see how well someone's training is going, typically in the running world the data is gathered through mobile phones and things. If you're a runner and you use Strava, you have a bunch of data about how your running is going because it logs your speed, your elevation. If you have a smartwatch, your heart rate, all that kind of stuff. This throws all of that out and uses regular cameras, several of them, and then uses software in order to collate that data into models that essentially create a copy of that athlete. It is way too complicated for me to understand, but it sounds so cool. So as I mentioned, there is a full Scientific American article on this, which I haven't had time to read through in full detail yet. I'm very much looking forward to, because this little excerpt that Adafruit have here is absolutely fascinating. So the technology on display in Tokyo suggests the future of elite athletic training lies not merely in gathering data about the human body, but using that data to create digital replicas of it. That's really quite interesting, because if you get someone to do their sport, do their running, do their whatever sport it is, all the different ways that they can do it, then they can predict using that sensor data what might work best in any given situation. That's a fantastic idea. An Intel product called 3DAT feeds live footage from the cloud into the cloud. There, an AI program uses deep learning to analyze the athlete's movements and identifies key performance characteristics such as top speed and deceleration. In this case, it's talking about how it's sharing that information with viewers and showing slow motion graphic representations of the action. So this is, an entirely new way of seeing that. I wonder if it's actually being used in the footage on television for the Olympics. I haven't actually been watching any of it as of yet. I'm just going to catch up with things after the fact. But I will leave a link to this in the description of the video, and there you will find a link to the Scientific American article along with this video, both of which are definitely worth a look. The video is only 3 minutes long, and as mentioned, I've only read a little of this article, but I already find it very interesting indeed. Now, this Friday, as in the Friday after this video is released, is CircuitPython Day. Now, CircuitPython, in case you are not familiar with it at all, is Adafruit's version of MicroPython, which is Python for microcontrollers. CircuitPython, in my opinion, has a number of advantages over MicroPython if you are a beginner or wanting to prototype something quickly, in that it is very human readable. A lot of library work has been done already. It's got an incredibly robust set of libraries for pretty much anything you would want to do, and it's Adafruit, so it is well documented. There's a huge amount of tutorials on the website itself, and the Adafruit Discord is one of the friendliest places in the world to go in with a question where you feel like a bit of a noob for asking it, and one of the professionals who works on CircuitPython will help you through it. I personally have had some fantastic experiences in there trying to do things that I was way out of my depth to do, and had some very patient people walk me through some very difficult concepts. But yes, this is CircuitPython Day, and a day that celebrates CircuitPython. It celebrates the idea of doing it on microcontrollers, and there are various ways you can get involved. Now, not least by tagging your projects with CircuitPython Day 2021 on social media, but there's also these tentative activities. Now, I'm sure this will be filled out in more time. 1 p.m. US Eastern Time, Jeff and Katney discuss CircuitPython, a CircuitPython board tour with Lady Ada, and a Scott's Deep Dive special edition. Now, if you're not familiar with Scott's Deep Dive, that's a fantastic show that essentially goes through the innards of CircuitPython, what's being worked on. If you are interested in how a library gets built and maintained, it's a fantastic thing to watch. I've been involved in various of those live streams, sometimes as a lurker, sometimes chatting on. Yes, there's also going to be the show and tell, but probably by the time this video goes out, the 4th of the 8th, yes, this will be in the past when you're watching this video. The show and tell, by the way, is a weekly thing, so it is worth keeping an eye on that too. In short, I will link this in the description. CircuitPython is a wonderful thing, and I'm looking forward to celebrating it as with everyone else. The janky little Trackmania controller I showed in the show a few weeks earlier that I made is something that I am probably going to try and soup up a little bit and show off on CircuitPython Day. I'm probably going to show me, once again, struggling my way around the tracks in Trackmania using a motion controller rather than a keyboard or a controller, which is the normal way of doing it. But I will link this in the description, and if you are planning on doing something for CircuitPython Day, maybe let us know in the comments of the video as well. I'm very interested to see who uses it and what you're planning to do with it. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all of the support you've been showing this show on YouTube and by shopping the Electromaker shop, and of course by joining our Discord and things like that. It is all much appreciated. But the most important thing for me is that you have a fun, safe and creative week, and I will see you in the next show.